I'm not even exaggerating. Like I literally won a car from like a giveaway from this type of, thing. And it's like, I literally told my girlfriend, I was like, babe, I think I'm going to win this car. And like, I said it out loud like 3 times and I won the fucking car.
Welcome to Elevated Frequencies, the show that gives you access to the next level of house and techno so you can explore an elevated lifestyle. I am super honored that today's guest gave me the time of day because he is one of the busiest artists out there. Nitti, also known as Nitti Gritti, half of Side Piece, half of Say My Nitti, is a Grammy Award-winning producer, social media maven, and one of the top producers in the world. If you've been listening to this show from the beginning, I always say if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it. And that couldn't be more true for Nitti. So today we're diving in to how he manages to do it all. Thank you so much for joining me. It is so nice to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And can I say first ever Grammy affiliated artist on this show? So that's pretty cool.
I love it. That's definitely one of my favorite things. I feel like that you can like quantify because it's hard with music to like be like, oh, you're good or not. So it's like it's nice to have, it's not always the best thing because they're sometimes weird about how you win or the politics. But I try to look at everything with like a grain of salt and happy to be honored in that way. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. And, it's not even the most interesting thing about you, which is pretty amazing. Like digging into your profiles and just everything that you've done with music, but even more so your brand as a whole is so incredible. And I'm sure you've talked about this ad nauseum, but one big pillar of this show is like the entrepreneurship side of music and building a brand. And what I'm just so blown away by is how you seem to have this ability to be everywhere all at once. You have all these collabs, these projects with other artists, but then you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, you're on Twitter, you're killing you're checking all the boxes. So like, how are you doing that?
I just don't do it alone. I mean, the real key is you're usually feeling overwhelmed. So, once you bring in people that you trust, and it takes, it's taken me a while, I feel like, to like build up to the people that I really trust. Obviously my management team does so much, but now I finally have a team of like, people that help me plan. Honestly, one of my favorite people on my team is the most basic thing. And she's great, but like she helps me just literally schedule things on my calendar. And I know that sounds so basic, but it's huge for me because it's like something that simple puts all the little pieces together and makes it so I can post on TikTok today. And then, we go talk to someone who helps me with my, social media. And then there's people that help with the PR. So it's like, it really is just a team effort. And the older I get, the more mature I am, like with that type of stuff with my team. And even right now I've been like talking to them about, I'm like, hey, like, let's come into this year and really do the best things for me in terms of like efficiency, because I love being able to have as much time for creativity and leave away all the other stuff until, or kind of the opposite, get it out of the way in a sense where it's like, hey, let's do the boilerplate stuff. And then now let me go be an artist. And getting in and out of that is probably the hardest part, but it really just, the short answer is like, I just don't do it alone. And I really have to, trust the people I work with to help me do all those things and get my voice out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you're talking about your team. One thing that's super interesting to me is to learn how successful artists started to build it. And like, where did you start? Like, obviously we know having a manager, is an important part of any artist team. But beyond that, where did you start to think about like, here's where I need the most help. Here's where my strengths are and my weaknesses. Who can I bring on? So like, who is that first person besides the manager?
So I had one manager when I started, but honestly, what's funny is I ended up adding other managers because they kind of all brought something. So I essentially have a team where, I have multiple managers, but they kind of all do different things. And that actually is kind of how it spread apart the different, they delegated one more towards touring, one more towards scheduling, stuff like that. And once I had that as like a building block, I would always recommend starting with that because they help you make those decisions for what you're asking, which is like, for me, it was a photographer, videographer. That was kind of the first thing. You got to capture what's going on. And then once you kind of have, we spent just years, just me and a photographer, no tour manager, no social media manager, no PR person. And it was just getting stuff, building the page, get to 100,000 or get to whatever you feel is comfortable. And I don't know, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's just all about engagement now. So I feel like when I started, it was like, get to 100K, but now it's like, you can have 20,000 followers and be crushing it. So it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then once you kind of have the content and then you get overwhelmed with too much content, which is like, I'm kind of in this boat now where it's like, I have so much that I needed someone to help me organize it and schedule it. So it's kind of like building blocks on what you think you need that next person to help manage, efforts. And for me, it's usually musically is actually the easiest. I won't say the easiest because it's never easy to finish projects, but I naturally tend to go work on an airplane. I will go work on music. And in a hotel, I'll work on music. And I just, it's the most natural thing for me. And some people are actually the opposite. They're like really good with content. And sometimes I know very, really successful people that their music is actually, they're like, yo, how do you work on an airplane? How do you work it out? Like they have to be comfortable in a different setting. So for me, it was always like musically, I could do most of it and then ask for help later. But all the like managing of my time, I try to be, organized and on time and stuff, but I'm definitely kind of like fit into that artist bill where like, I'll just go off and start working and I love getting lost in it and not no outside world. So that for me, that's at least what has helped is getting my organization stuff, most of that helped with people that are like keeping me on track and scheduling. And then I can be a creative outside of that. So probably in that order, with the manager, photographer, and then scheduling and social media management. That was kind of how I built. And my team helped me build the rest of the team as well.
It's huge because one, I think a lot of people think that they need to do everything themselves. It's like the noble way, or they are too afraid to relinquish control, like over, oh, well, I don't want somebody to tell me how to make my content or whatever. And then another thing is, people are scared to make an investment. And I know that everyone's at different stages in their career, so it might not be feasible to hire on add 10 new members to your team. But at some point, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not, this is just my opinion, at some point you need to bring on help if you want to get to the next level. Sometimes it means taking a step back, either you're paying out of pocket, for that help or whatever it is to be able to take 5 steps forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the number one thing I think is you got to reinvest. Like almost all of the money, in the beginning of my career was just a cycle of like, we were making money, but we just cycled it back through into the tour, into the photos, into the videos, into the music promotion. And, it's like, you kind of have to, it's the only way to grow really. So it's definitely a risk. I'm about to be kind of going back into that same mindset with the next Nitti, project / album kind of ideas I'm having. So I'm about to, at any stage you can do it. Doesn't matter if it looks like you've gone far or you're beginning or towards the middle of your career, whatever it is. It's just there's always a time where you kind of have to like take that risk and start building again and put yourself out there.
Yeah. That's really important for people to hear. And it also means like maybe holding back on, it's like you get a little bit of money and you're like, oh, I want to go buy that thing or upgrade my apartment or whatever. It's like, but if I reinvest into my artist project, who knows where that can take me. So I think you have to have that focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, your content, one thing I noticed about you is you do the trends, which I think is so impressive because I just don't have that brain built to like come up with something every time I see a trend. Like you did that TikTok, like we're producers. Of course we, whatever. But then you also come up with a lot of original concepts. So you said you have somebody helping you with content, but can you walk me through your process? Do you have like a day where you're like, today I'm going to think about all the things I'm going to put out next week, or is it kind of just like ebb and flow?
Yeah, I mean, recently I've been going towards, I try and have like a day of the week, usually like Mondays, honestly, just because I love getting stuff out of the way of the week. So because if you really think about most people's like brains, like a day, a week, a month, maybe a year. Most of the time, the beginning is where you're kind of focused, right? Beginning of the day, you wake up a little more focused than the end of the day. Beginning of the year, you're a little easier before the holidays. Beginning of the week, Monday, you're like, all right, I'm back on it. But then the weekend, so like I've really noticed this trend with myself specifically where like I want to get that stuff out of the way. And I literally have like a meeting usually once a week where I'm like, hey, let's just go over like concepts. And honestly, most of like funny stuff, I kind of just sit here and kind of have fun with it. And then, you know, sometimes I do it myself. Sometimes my editor comes over and helps me. And it's like, I've done a lot of it by myself. And I've also just been like going off of people. I can go either way. But it also is like, it is hard to teach that. I don't know. I don't know how to like, and again, I'm not always the best at it either. There's people that are even better than that. So it's like, I probably have to still realize I can't be the best one of that, or maybe someone's not as good as me at it. But it's like, there's different areas where like I like and enjoy. And I was like one of the first like DJs on TikTok doing like beat videos and stuff like that. And it was just because it came naturally. I wasn't like forcing it. So I would say if it's, you know, if it's stuff where it becomes naturally, and like I'm usually thinking about little funny stuff. I don't know, I watch like South Park and I do love that type of stuff. So I enjoy taking certain things lightly. It's just like, yeah, you really do have to try to do it though. It's not just like, yeah, I'm just like, oh, I just think of an idea and I just feel like everything takes time. That's the one lesson I learned is like a stupid video like that DJ one took an hour to make, you know, and it doesn't sound like a lot of time. You're like, oh, just an hour, but it's like,
no, it's a
spending
pain.
an hour on something is a long time, you know, it's like
on a 2-minute video.
Exactly.
And, yeah. And so it's funny that you say this. So my brother, he's a producer as well. His name is Prapa, and he has like students that always ask him like, how do I make content? And he's like, think about your day, like as kind of dystopian as this sounds, think about your day in chunks. Like, how could you make content out of something like that you're making breakfast right now? And if you start thinking about like going through your life that way, it will start to come more naturally.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And it's literally like, it's something that you have to practice at. And I think the resistance is that a lot of people don't want to, because they're like, I just want to make fucking music.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you get the resistance.
That's like, I'm kind of going back and forth with that too, because I love making certain styles of content where it's a little more, you know, trendy and this and that. But I'm like excited. I'm about to start stepping into more branding and this whole look and feel of the new album that's going to, you know, feel like more of a cohesive thing and not just like random spurts. And that to me is actually harder because I've never, you know, I can come up with little stupid videos any day of the week. So it's now I'm taking the risk to like, kind of like, you know, like Millennium has it where you look on his page and it just has all the branding and everything super slim. And I was like, oh, that's something I've never done before. And I want to try it. And I think I can be successful at it if I work with a team and talk to the people and, you know, the music's all feeling cohesive and stuff like that. So even for me, where like one side of that content is maybe easier, now I'm trying another piece because I've always wanted to, you know, have that cohesiveness. And it's something I'm not, you know, I've never actually done, you know, successfully yet. So it's, even for me at this stage, I'm like, yeah, I may have done that. Now I'm learning something new. And it's like, a lot of people don't realize like it also is changing. That's what Diplo, Tiesto, a lot of the kind of OG electronic guys, I feel like they're always reinventing or learning a new style, a new thing. Like they're like, you know, in the beginning, Diplo was doing like memes and stuff. And now he doesn't really do that anymore because you can't just stay the same. So like, yeah, maybe I'm doing certain trending kind of funny videos here and there, but I'm realizing like, oh, for me at the end of the day, when I, you know, die, what I want to look back on is, oh, this style. So I'm like now trying to learn this like cohesive. I want to make an album, musical, playing my instruments, stuff like that. So I'm like gearing towards that. But I obviously used a lot of the other stuff to get to a point where I was like, you know, able to, I guess, have the opportunity to reinvest my money and do stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's easy to get comfortable when you're doing something well and it's working and you're getting the engagement, but a good artist or any good creative knows that when things have kind of been good and working for a while, that might mean it's time, you know, to take a turn. Like my last episode was with Barclay Crenshaw, you know, and he was Claude, and now he's like, things were going great for Claude,
He's trying to.
He's going back to his roots. And so if you want to, if you want to stay relevant, you do have to evolve and challenge yourself because you learn things along the way.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's really cool. And I saw, because digging through all your socials, I saw something you posted on Twitter too about like writer's block and like creativity block. And I think that's really important to talk about because I wrote it down. You said something about like when you're not having inspiration, like you can still create, like you can create through writer's block. And I think like a lot of change can be inspired, from pushing through that. So talk to me about that tweet, because I thought that was like a really valuable bit of information you're giving your followers.
Yeah, I think it's just personal. I've been through it exactly like that. So it really is just I've lived that type of writer's block where I'm like, am I really? Sometimes it's like distracting or deceiving, I will say, where it actually isn't writer's block per se. You might just be aiming in the wrong direction. Because once you start aiming in the right direction, there's no such thing as writer's block. Like I realized that, I guess, with this new kind of area I'm going into with Nitti, where like I had a departure from the original sound where I love, bass music and just a big energy and just I've always loved metal, I've always loved rock. So like that type of energy has always, brought my stage presence to the highest level, I feel like. And, through COVID with side piece and stuff, it was kind of like that did so well. It was hard to remember what Nitti was doing. So I kind of had this moment where I was like, man, what do I make for Nitti? Why am I like having trouble? But it was more just I wasn't looking or aiming in that direction. I was like, wait, let me come back. Like, what do I love? What do I like? What do I need to go get inspired from? And I started, re-listening to all the Bring Me Horizon stuff and their new shit and certain metal bands that I hadn't listened to and just going back into, even the Killers, like they're still releasing music and just all these things, a big anthem rock and certain like, mainstream metal and stuff like that. I was like, what are my actual influence? And then it just started like, there was no such thing. It's like, it's so easy. Now I'm like, what do I remix? Anything that's in that vein. What do I make? Something that's inspired by that. How do I make content? However I want, as long as it pertains to that. And it just disappeared. And it was like this weight lifted where I was like, oh, that's right. I like this stuff a lot and I'm good at it. So it's like, it just really led the way to kind of remove that piece. Cause a lot of times people are like writer's block. Their writer's block is like, oh, I see, I don't know I'm just trying to think of someone like John Summit killing it right now. I have writer's block. I can't make music like John Summit. I'm like, you have writer's block because you're trying to be John Summit.
Right.
But what do you like? And if it is tech house, that's fine. Or if it is whatever house music, but like aiming towards a goal of like comparison is always going to give you writer's block because you're not going to be, he's probably been figuring this out for his 10 years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm about to be figuring my shit out for almost 10 years. And it's like, these kids come up and they're like, yeah, I have writer's block. I'm like, oh, honey, like that's not writer's block. You just didn't figure out your sound yet. It's just like, it's just a thing where we think, when you're a kid and you listen to like emo music, you're like, oh, I'm so depressed. I've been through so much in my life. And it's like, then you get older, you're like, damn, that was nothing compared to what I just went through. It's like, it's kind of like that. It's like, yeah, it can be writer's block, but just if you really go with your actual music that you want to make for you, and then you go within that, you should be able to 90% of the time, unless it's for another reason that you're having writer's block, like personal issues, which is totally separate. I totally understand. Like that can be a real thing, but most people's is deceiving and it's not writer's block. They're just having a comparison trap and they're like, oh, I want to be like him. And I'm like, you're not going to be like him in 1 year. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I love that you said there's no such thing as writer's block if you're aiming in the right direction. That's really, really powerful. And the whole comparison thing, one big thing. So, I'm a branding consultant. And what I always tell people, and it gets confusing, is you have to create your personal brand, and whatever art or you make or whatever you do has to be for you. And by being yourself, you will find people who are attracted to that because they are like you. You can't create for other people.
It's literally this book that's like,
what is that book?
It's just this Rick Rubin book where he had like I think it went viral too. So like,
yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, I just think people saw it so they might recognize it. But he literally says that when you make music for other people, like that's usually the biggest trap of creating music and art in general, he says. But
because
yeah,
you're guessing, because if you're making music for other people, of course you're going to get writer's block because you don't know what they like. You're guessing. But when you're making it for yourself, it's like, you know what you like at this, of course, tastes evolve. Like, I'm a different person. I'm sure you are too. I'm 32 in a couple weeks. I'm a way different person than I was at 22.
yeah,
But in general, the tastes and what you've liked, like, have somewhat remained the same.
yeah,
The kid shows you watched as a kid, like the music you grew up listening to, all of that stuff, makes you who you are. And so
yeah,
I just think that's really important because people, like you said, they want to compare and they just want to be the next whoever. It's like, no, be the first yourself.
yeah. And again, it's like the reference is like one of my tricks, like that's super simple, is like I'm just a YouTube person. Like it's such a fun whole. I know TikTok can also replace that. I just find myself with like long form content better if I want to dive into it a little more. But you can do the same thing on TikTok, where it's like if you kind of just get a little bit, and this is dangerous waters for people that easily get distracted on social media. So I wouldn't say if you're like someone that just like is a scroller but I'm the opposite. I literally don't do that unless I want to, because most of the time I want to be doing something else because like half my life is social media. So for me, just going on watching old music videos or new music videos or little music documentaries or even shit about cars, whatever. There's just all these ways where I like get inspiration from just enjoying someone else's, whatever they're presenting. And it just, you watch like, an hour of certain things, especially if you're trying to make music. If you watch an hour of music videos or music documentaries, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be like excited to go try a song. Like that's just a real cheat code. I feel like a lot of people, I don't know, that's just the simplest one. It works almost every time. So
yeah, that's really smart. And I think the trap of social media too is it takes us out of reality. I think it's different what you said, watching music videos. That's different than engaging on like social media, like commenting, seeing what so-and-so is doing.
yeah,
But like even like being out, I like my like hobby that I don't monetize. I just like doing little crafts, like making random little shit. Right. And so when I'm out in the world, like I'm trying to be more present and taking in what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, like everything around me, because that's inspiration. And I feel like we've really just having phones with us 24/7 have gotten away from that.
yeah.
Like
No,
we're missing it.
when you take, I guess I'm happy I'm still good at that. But like, I drive with like no music usually or no things, or like I work out. I don't really be overly like, I'll listen to more like it's weird. It's working out with a podcast, but like, I kind of like it. I don't know. It's like sometimes even doing nothing or working out with no music or being alone with your thoughts, it's pretty interesting what, for me, it's God, but for whatever anyone believes, the universe just gives you sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
I watched this, I think it was honestly another podcast, and this woman said to this guy, she was like, how do you think luck works and stuff like that? And he's like, I don't know. And she's like, let me explain to you. She's like, if you came to work today, can you name how many red cars you saw? And he's like, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2. And she's like, now, what if I told you I give you $100 for every red car that you saw on your way? And he was like, I'd be looking for them. And she's like, exactly. So these lucky opportunities and these things, are you even looking for them? Because most people, like, they're distracting themselves by watching a show or distracting themselves. So they're not looking for what they really want. They're just like consuming a bunch of shit. So that, to me, I've always like been a visualizer, a dreamer. I say things out loud, and I'm not even exaggerating. Like, I literally won a car from like a giveaway from this type of, thing. And it's like, I literally told my girlfriend, I was like, babe, I think I'm going to win this car. And like, I said it out loud like 3 times, and I won the fucking car. So it's like,
that's amazing.
Other things, like I had a dream. This is a funny one. I don't think I've ever said this on like a interview because I kind of just remembered it. But like, I remember having this weird dream at a picnic table with like John Krasinski from The Office, Justin Bieber, and like Diplo. And this was way before I worked with him. And it was I don't even remember what we talked about. And I was just like, I woke up, I was like, that was so weird. And like, I think it was like a year later that I started like emailing Diplo, and like, there's just been all these weird things where like I've had a dream or I've had a thing, and I just don't ignore them anymore. Like, I never, ever ignore that shit, because nine times out of 10, like you're given a lot more than as long as you're perceptive and you're looking for it. That's what people don't do. They don't look for those, red cars per se. So I like that is one of the craziest shit to me that you can't explain and just always happens.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say this. I am a big believer in everything that you just said, especially the part about saying things out loud, because saying things out loud makes them more tangible and feel more obtainable. Because
Yeah.
of course, if you say, "Oh, I'll never be able to do X, Y, Z," you just blow it off in your mind. But like if you write it down, if you say it out loud, you talk to your partner about it. My husband and I do the same thing. We're always saying things like, one thing was like, we're flying to Hawaii next month, and I was like, we got to upgrade these tickets. You're like 6'5". We need the extra leg room. I was like, it's $700. I was like, let's both make an extra $700 tomorrow. And we both made an extra fucking $700. Like I got something that came in for 700, like a brand deal. He has a remodeling company, and like they added on like literally $700 of work.
Love it.
And I was like, this is and we just kept doing it. And so now we always say like, ooh, can you go make X amount of money today, or do this, do that? And it's so fucking real. And guess what? Like it costs nothing to just try. I don't know why more people don't try. Like, what do you have to lose? Right.
Yeah. I mean, that I go on about that all day. I've seen it work in my favor every single time. I mean, I think people get, there's a patience thing to it. I'm sure, as someone that's had it work, you've had it not work too. So it's like,
right.
It is funny though, that you normally know the ones that you're like, this is a real, you start to notice the ones like when now people are like, yeah, tell me I'm going to win a car. I'm like I can't, it doesn't work that way. I knew when I knew, and I never say it again. I'll never, unless I feel it ever again, I'm not going to be like, you get a car. I'm not fucking Oprah. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to just start doing that. But when it's just you get better and better at it.
Yes. You get better and better at it. And it is, in order for it to work for you, you have to have the switch flip in your brain that you're looking for the red cars.
Yeah.
Like if you're not committed to that, it's not going to work. And I'm sure you feel this way. I mean, it's hard because like we all have friends and family that we love and we've had forever in our lives. And as we kind of develop and like start to see things that way and they don't, there can be friction.
Yeah.
But I know for me, like I really try to not have anyone in my life that's like super cynical or, woe is me all the time. It just, I don't want that energy around.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I mean, that's another life lesson is like, you got to keep your own circle pretty tight. Cause that once you start listening to outside sources, it's just, it can be hard if they're not the right sources or not on your side.
Yes. So before we wrap up, I know like you have all of these different, like I said, collaborations with different artists. You're kind of changing your direction on your brand.
Mm-hmm.
What are you most excited about right now? Because you're not in the side piece like tour anymore, right? Was Chicago your last stop?
Yeah, we're doing Portland. It was like it kind of just stuff got moved around at the end of the year. So yeah, we're about to start up a little it's kind of like for the culture type of thing. Like we're about to have some fun just playing these rooms that we went back to the agent and said, hey, we love these cities. We want to go back there and just kind of have fun, get content, be a little more like easy, try out some new music, not some big crazy tours where we got to like overly prepare. Like we kind of just wanted to have fun for a little bit. Yeah. So we have that type of tour, which is nice, stress-free, go in there, enjoy it, get some dinners, hang out with fans. Hopefully now we're not as stressed with like sound checks as much where we can actually like do like, stuff like giveaways. And sometimes like when you're at a big show like the Shrine, you're like, damn, like we have to prepare. We don't know if we have time to do this. And it's like, right. Have some fun with it. And then for Nitti, I'm like in the middle currently of working on my first album and just a whole slew of like kind of, I was talking about a little bit before, but I have a really like pinpointed direction in the same, categories as like somewhere in between the Kazos and the Illeniums, and like kind of like Bring Me to the Horizon and even some stuff kind of like the Killers in a sense where I just love these various areas of alternative rock and metal, but with obviously my own flair. There's a lot of like almost anime influences, and like kind of how like the intro songs of anime are always like metal songs, but with like cute little singer girls on them. So like, I don't know, there's some of that kind of like influence. And I also just love anime. So yeah, there's just all this really direct stuff where I was like, I love this shit. I want to make something that really feels, cohesive. So I'm like in the middle of working on all that. And yeah, it's really exciting because I've never been, I guess, so aligned on Nitti to the point where I'm like, everything makes sense. It's like, it's all right there. There's like I have a remix of like Linkin Park and a remix of like,
Awesome.
I don't know, just very, very like, it's not all like, oh, it's just alternative or just new metal. It's just like the general, 90s through now alternative and rock and stuff. So I don't want to overly be like, I'm just metal or I'm just this, but those types of sounds where you have everybody screaming at the top of their lungs and just that feeling of togetherness where it's like, that's where the dance kind of comes into it. And obviously it's an electronic based project. It's not like I'm making a band or anything. But it's just something so exciting where I've always, gathered my thoughts and musically towards that direction. So that's what I'm super excited on to work on.
That's awesome. Well, you seem like a very busy guy, but happy to be busy. And, your fans and the industry is the beneficiary of that. So thank you so much for spending some time sharing your wisdom. A lot of what you said is so important for people to hear from, someone they look up to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. A great, insight on the questions and stuff. A lot of people don't really take the time to do that. So it means a lot, honestly. It makes it way more fun to do these when it's something like this and not just like name 3 songs you like right now, stuff like that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One thing about me is I'm not forcing my beliefs on manifestation and the universe on others because I know that it requires a very open mind. So I love when artists bring it up first because it's just confirmation that I am bringing the right people on the show. I love Nitti's story about how he won a car because it's more proof that stating your desires has merit. I always talk about journaling on this show, that it's a great way to start working on getting comfortable with saying your desires out loud. So that is my challenge for you over the next few days. Write down at least 3 things that you really want. Be specific as Nitti saying he's going to win a fucking car. And if you want to go more in depth with this, you can sign up for my free weekly newsletter where I have a ton of goal-setting journal prompts, or you could snag my vision boarding guide. Both are linked in the show notes and in my Stan store in my bio on social. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, I will see you next week.